We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? I'll give the call to the the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Last year, the Prime Minister promised Australians that inflation was under control and that his government had, quote, done all it can. Yet Australians have now been hit with the 13th interest rate increase under this Prime Minister, and the average mortgage holder is paying around $23,000 more a year just to keep a roof over their head. Prime Minister, is it still your position that inflation is under control?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for her question, and of course we know that Australians are still doing it tough with cost of living pressures, and our number one focus is looking at how we can help families take some of the pressure off. Inflation had a 6 in front of it and was rising when we came to office, and it now has a 3 in front of it, but we want to get it down. We want to get it down, and that is why we're very much focused on achieving just that. And in the OECD annual report of January, just a month ago, they had a lot to say about inflation and about the position that Australia finds ourselves in. They said headline inflation peaked at close to 8% in late 2022, a somewhat lower and later peak than in many OECD countries. They went on to say about wages. While many OECD economies experienced falls in real wages and real disposable household incomes when inflation surged in 2021-23 as price rises outpaced nominal income gains, real incomes in Australia have risen since 2022. They went on to say, with regard to the economy and the budget, Australia's resilience during the shocks of the past half-decade fits with its avoidance of recession, supported by prudent fiscal policy and credible monetary policy. And indeed, we will continue to do what we can to provide support for people. The opposition like to talk about the budget, but they never talk about what they plan to cut. We know that at the last election they plan to increase our taxes paid by every single Australian, and we know that the person who's now been put in charge of not just being the shadow treasurer but the shadow assistant treasurer at the same time has committed some $600 billion to a nuclear plan at the last election. They wanted to sack 41,000 frontline public servants, and they wanted to increase income taxes for every taxpayer.
Order. Prime Minister was asked for his position on inflation, and he is giving information to the House with a very broad question that he was asked about. You'd like a yes or no answer, and for the millionth time I can't deliver that for the member for Wannon, but I will hear from you on a point of order.
It goes to relevance, Speaker. The Prime Minister was asked a very direct question as to whether he had inflation under control or not.
No, resume your seat. That wasn't the question he was asked. Member for Wannon, that wasn't the question he was asked. The question was, is it your position that inflation is under control? He wasn't asked what you got up and asked about. So don't take points of order if you don't even know what the question is. The Leader of the Opposition was specific with her question. It wasn't what you just rose on your feet about. Order. Order. The Prime Minister in continuation.
Manager of Opposition Business, a new title in this chamber. The fact is that we're getting on with being focused on the needs of the Australian people. They're just focused on each other. They're just focused on each other. Liberals focused on other Liberals, Nats focused on other Nats, people joining the crossbench, and now talk of a three-way coalition with Pauline Hanson.
Order. Prime Minister will refer to other senators by their correct title. Call goes to the honourable member for Richmond.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister. How is the Albanese government delivering a future defence estate for our Australian Defence Force? And what have been alternative approaches?
Give the call to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence.
Member for her question and acknowledge her life of service in this place and also as a police officer. Over the last 6 years, as a result of vandalism and theft, Defence has spent $1 million on the Penrith Training Depot, a site which has been vacant since 2016. And at the Maribyrnong Defence site, which has been vacant for decades, in 2022 there was a grass fire which required the expenditure of $10 million in remediation. Now, Defence simply has to stop spending money on properties that it does not need, and this is what is at the heart of the most significant reform to our defence estate in our nation's history. But this reform is difficult because in relation to every defence site you'll find people with an attachment to it, and the difficulty was very much observed by Jan Mason and Jim Miller in their defence estate audit, when they said Defence is holding more property than it needs and is carrying the burden of past indecision. Attempts to consolidate and rationalise property holdings in the past have been stymied by a lack of political and organisational will to overcome challenges. And those words are particularly appropriate to those opposite, because in the 9.5 years when whatever we call that was the Abbott-Turnbull-Morrison government, they did absolutely nothing. And what is also clear, in their response to yesterday's announcement, they have not changed. Now, the Shadow Minister has said that these properties play, and I quote, a vital role in Australia's defence capability. But which ones? Exactly which ones? And the former Shadow Minister, the member for Canning, has said that our reforms are both short-sighted and foolish. And so what is absolutely clear is that if those opposite were the government today, they'd still be squibbing it today. But our government has the political will, because the Defence Estate Review has also made clear that if we do not act, governments will spend $2 billion over the next 25 years on these properties without making any contribution to our capability. And that is completely unacceptable, because we win on the battlefield by virtue of capability. And that means we must stop wasting money on properties that we don't need, and more to the point, we need a defence estate which is finely tuned to the requirements of the Australian Defence Force so that it can be the foundation that our force needs to do its job to defend Australia.
Before I call the honourable member for Indi, I'm pleased to inform the House today that in the Speaker's gallery is Her Excellency Ms Fiona Flood, the Ambassador to Australia from Ireland. A very warm welcome to you. I give the call to the honourable member for Indi.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Emergency Management. Bushfires are still burning in Victoria, and thus far over 75% of homes lost and private land burnt is in my electorate of Indi. My electorate is grateful for the support provided by the government to date, but so much more is needed. Minister, what further support, beyond that already announced, can communities in my electorate expect from the Commonwealth?
Give the call to the Honourable Minister for Emergency Management, Local Government and Territories.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Indi for her question, and I acknowledge her community is going through a particularly tough time at this point in time. A lot of Victorians have been impacted by bushfires that have burnt through over 415,000 hectares across Victoria, and has had a major impact on communities right across that place. Can I again thank the member for Indi and the member for Nichols for inviting me into their local communities. It is really important in this role to hear firsthand from communities about what they're going to need, not only in the short term but in the medium and long term as well. And can I thank the members in Ruffy, who I met in particular. I said the other day they were so worried about their local environment, let alone their own homes. And I heard very clearly from them their desire to see the Ruffy Community Centre rebuilt, which they lovingly referred to as the TCC, and so we will continue to work with your community on those things. I also heard really clearly from both Strathbogie and Murrindindi Shire Council members about the need to make sure that infrastructure is built back more resilient and that we work on those community cohesion projects together into the future. As the member knows, the Prime Minister announced another package of support, so $158 million, going to things like extended power outages for businesses, clean-up support for community members, temporary accommodation, rebates for people who need to clean out water tanks, and mental health support in particular. And we'll continue to extend support where it's needed, and we'll work with the Victorian government on that. We have enacted over $330 million in that state Commonwealth disaster recovery funding arrangements already. However, we recognise that the state and local councils are best placed to identify the type and the level of assistance that is going to be required following this disaster, in accordance with their responsibilities for disaster management. So the Albanese government will continue to work really closely with the Allan Labor government and with local councils and local communities in particular to understand where supports and assistance is going to be needed into the future. And our government stands ready, willing and able to assist when those support packages come forward. We know that recovery isn't a straight line. It's not going to be a speedy process. So our commitment is to continue to work with all levels of government and local communities to see this recovery tail through, and we stand ready, willing and able to support as we can when we can.
Call to the honourable member for Moore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government helping with the cost of living and strengthening the budget? How does that compare to other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Speaker. The good people of Moore elected an absolute champion as their local member in this place. I appreciate his question, Mr Speaker. Now, inflation last week and rates this week were important reminders of the challenges in our economy despite all of the progress that has been made together. Inflation at the end of the year didn't come in much higher than we expected, but it came in higher than we would like. Some of that inflation is temporary, some of it is more persistent. It's nowhere near the peaks that we saw in 2022 under those opposite, but all of it adds to the pressure that people feel around the country, and the Reserve Bank's decision will add to that pressure as well. So we understand that inflation is too high in our economy. We acknowledge that, we get that, and that's why we're acting on it, Mr Speaker. We are acting on it with cost of living help that those opposite oppose. We are acting on it with tax cuts that those opposite oppose and want to repeal, Mr Speaker. We are acting on it with budget repair that those opposite were completely incapable of, Mr Speaker. Now, inflation is one of the three major challenges, but it is the most pressing challenge in our economy in the near term. We've also got a longer-standing challenge with productivity, and also both of those are set against the backdrop of global economic uncertainty. But we need to remember, Mr Speaker, as we confront all of this together, we also have big advantages. As the Reserve Bank Governor said on Tuesday, and I'm quoting, we are actually in a really good position. And this goes, I think, to those opposites. Well, they're now sledging the Reserve Bank Governor, Mr Speaker. They're now sledging the Reserve Bank Governor. So out of control is their partisanship that they're now going after the independent Reserve Bank Governor, just like the opposition leader went after the Treasury Secretary earlier in the week.
I'm just going to ask the Treasurer to pause. I genuinely can't hear. There's too much noise. The member for Goldstein is not going to interject anymore, otherwise we won't be having the MPI today. I mean it. So no more interjections from the member for Goldstein. Otherwise, the opposition will lose the MPI and there will be consequences for actions. Okay? The Leader of the Nationals and the Deputy Leader of the Nationals are getting a good go at the moment, but that won't continue if they continue to interject. The House is going to settle. I'm just going to ask the Treasurer to return to the question.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr Speaker. When those opposite make comparisons with the major advanced economies, they never make the full comparison. We've got stronger economic growth and lower unemployment than most of the major advanced economies. We've got stronger jobs growth and less debt than all of the major advanced economies.
Order.
And every one of them has had a negative quarter of growth, and we haven't had a negative quarter of economic growth. We're also strengthening business investment. We've got near-record high labour force participation. We've got a lot going for us in our economy. Now, our objective is to maximise our strengths and address our challenges in the economy in our usual considered and methodical way. We know that there is more work to do across inflation, productivity, making our economy more resilient in the face of global economic uncertainty. That will be the focus in May, and we will not be distracted by the three-ring circus over there.
Give a call. When the House comes to order, the Minister for Veterans Affairs will cease interjecting. The member for Herbert. I'd like to hear from the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. He has the call now.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And my question goes to the Treasurer. Yesterday in question time, the Treasurer referred to his responsibility and actually refused to take responsibility for rising interest rates by quoting AMP economist Diana Messina. But today, Ms Messina told the AFR the Treasurer had cherry-picked her comments and that she, and I quote, didn't say the government was not contributing to inflation. Will the Treasurer apologise for misrepresenting Ms Messina's comments?
Order. Order. The Treasurer. Order. The member for Latrobe. The Treasurer has begun his answer yet. Order. Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. First of all, I think I've said a number of times now through the course of this week and before that, I take responsibility for all aspects of my job, including our part in the fight against inflation. I think I've made that very clear and repeatedly so. Now, when I quoted the economist that the Shadow Assistant Treasurer is referring to, I made it really clear, Diana Messina, when I quoted her from her interview on the ABC on Tuesday morning, I was making 2 points very clear, and both of these points still stand. First of all, there is not a unanimous view amongst economists, the view pushed by those opposite. That remains the case. And secondly, the quote that I used from the interview that she gave on Tuesday morning on the ABC reflects the factual point that what we saw in the economy in 2025 was public demand growth making a smaller contribution to demand in the economy and private demand growth making a bigger contribution to growth in the economy. Now, I understand that those opposite are so desperate in their current political condition, but they cannot deny the fact that the story of the economy in 2025 was the faster-than-expected recovery in the private economy. And if they don't want to take my word for it, Mr Speaker, then they should take the word of the Reserve Bank Governor, who said growth in private demand has strengthened substantially more than expected.
On my left will
the RBA Governor, private demand is growing more quickly than expected. In the Statement on Monetary Policy, private demand was much stronger than expected. In the Statement on Monetary Policy, the near-term upward revision is driven by private demand. In the press conference, private demand has turned out to be much stronger than we were forecasting. In the Statement on Monetary Policy, the contribution of public demand to year-ended GDP growth has continued to ease in recent quarters. And that's the point that a number of economists have made. It's a point that I've made. It's not a political opinion. It's not an economic opinion. It's a fact in the national accounts released in recent times.
Order. Give the call to the honourable member Barton.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Why is gender equality a priority for our Labor government, and why do all Australians have a responsibility to do more and do better on matters of gender equality?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Barton for her question, and she was there this morning along with many members of the House of Representatives and the Senate, attending the UN Women's event that was held here in the Parliament in the lead-up to International Women's Day. Greater equality for women is central to our government's agenda because it's fundamental to Australia's success. It's not an add-on or a nice-to-have. It's not confined to an individual portfolio or treated as a matter of special interest. It is about the national interest. This is about the investments that we make to close the gender pay gap, to boost economic opportunity, to address the national scourge of violence against women. Equality for women is also about the standards and example we set, the culture we are part of, and the language that we use. And last week, The Nightly published a piece by Aaron Patrick under the headline, "Why I Wouldn't Marry Susan Lee." That headline is a disgrace, and the article is no better. I don't intend to quote from it any further. You really only need to know one thing about it. That article would never have been written about a male political leader. One of the lessons I would hope that this parliament and those who observe it have learnt from Julia Gillard's time as Prime Minister is that it is not enough to shake our heads at this stuff in private. As leaders, we have a responsibility to call it out, and today, as Prime Minister, I call it out. Yeah. Mr Speaker, this can and should be a place for passionate arguments. A contest of ideas is a healthy thing in a democracy. But we need less hatred in our national discourse. We need less polarisation. We need fewer attempts to provoke outrage or simply manufacture it. Not everything needs to be dialed up to 11. This is a great country and we all love it. We're all here to serve it, and we should work together to set and uphold a better standard. That is a responsibility that all of us have in this place, but it's also a responsibility that people who comment on national affairs have as well.
The call to the honourable member for Wide Bay.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Minister, what date can Australian families expect their retail power bills to come down by $275?
The call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question and congratulating him on hosting 1,549 cheaper home batteries that have been installed in the electorate of Wide Bay since the 1st of July. And note that in May 2022, the wholesale price of energy in Queensland was $347 a megawatt hour and is today $58 a megawatt hour.
The Minister...
10 seconds.
Order. The Minister will just pause a sec, please. Order. The Minister's about 20 seconds in, but I'll hear from the member for Wide Bay on a point of order.
Thanks, Speaker. The question was very, very defined. The people that can't afford to pay their electricity bills can't afford to buy these batteries.
Right.
Is this guy the Duracell sales rep or is he the Energy Minister?
Resume your seat. Resume your seat. Order. Order. The member for Wide Bay needs to state that it was on relevance. The Minister's about 40 seconds in. He wasn't asked about... He's entitled to a preamble, but I'm going to make sure he's been directly relevant, so he wasn't asked about anything in the member's electorate except a very specific question.
The honourable member asked me when retail prices are set, and they apply from the 1st of July, and they apply after the default market offer is released, under the normal course of events, when they're not hidden, Mr Speaker, before an election by a minister. That is the normal course of events, that a draft default market offer will be released in March and a final in May. That can be changed by law if the minister chooses to, as the member for Hume did, and the average increase in Queensland that was hidden by the member for Hume was $165, 11.3% for households in Queensland that the member for Hume hid. Now, we've been very clear. Yes, The member is right. People pay
Order.
retail prices, not wholesale prices. That is 100% true. Wholesale prices are one of the inputs to retail prices. That's why the member for Hume set a target of $70 a megawatt hour for retail prices. When he left office, prices were more than $300 a megawatt hour. Wholesale prices feed into retail prices, and our energy market reforms ensure that they do so as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, I think the minister's concluded his answer. The minister's concluded his answer. Member for Flynn can just resume his seat for the moment, so I can hear from the honourable member for Hasluck.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Home Affairs. What progress has been made on the investigation into the alleged terrorist attack that occurred on January 26 in Perth?
Call to the Leader of the House and the Minister for Home Affairs.
Thanks very much, Speaker. And I thank the member for her question and acknowledge, as a proud West Australian, her very personal interest in this. The terrorist attack that was described by the Prime Minister at the start of question time in Perth was horrific. A 31-year-old man allegedly threw a homemade improvised explosive device. This is a bomb fitted with screws and ball bearings into a crowd of people rallying in support of First Nations Australians. It is fortunate that this bomb did not detonate, but be in no doubt it will be alleged in court that the intention was absolutely that the bomb would detonate. This could have been catastrophic. You think about the number of Australians who were there in a tight space. Had this gone the way it will be alleged it was intended to, we would have been looking at something quite catastrophic. The alleged offender was immediately arrested by West Australian Police and an investigation commenced. Within 40 minutes of that arrest, the joint counter-terrorism team had been engaged. That involves Western Australian Police, the Australian Federal Police and ASIO. Later, they announced that they are investigating this act as a potential terrorist attack. Since that time, I've been receiving regular updates since the alleged offence and yesterday, where I received a detailed personal briefing with the West Australian Police Minister, Reece Whitby, who had travelled here with the WA Police Commissioner and with the Australian Federal Police Commissioner, Chrissy Barrett. As a result of the investigations they've conducted, they have now charged a 31-year-old man with engaging in a terrorist attack, and as has been referred to, this is the first time an individual has been charged with engaging in a terrorist attack in Western Australia. The charge carries a maximum penalty of life in prison. It is alleged. Now, there is always a gap between the action and while there's often a period where people are saying, can you call it terrorism yet? And a period of delay. That's because terrorism is not defined simply by the action but also by the motivation. And we need to give police time to do their work to be able to get the strongest case together with respect to motivation. The motivation that will be alleged is a national, racially motivated ideological cause. White supremacist ideology has no place in modern Australia and no place in our country. When someone is made to feel unwelcome, made to feel like they don't belong, the message from Australia and from this parliament has to be that we stand with you. While there wasn't specific intelligence on this occasion, at a time where the national threat alert level is at probable, there are times when people have information and they are not sure whether it might be helpful. The request from the agencies is please report it. The National Security Hotline is 1800 123 400 for people to use for any information they think that might constitute a risk to public safety.
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Today, KPMG's chief economist said that the impact of government spending on inflation was, quote, plain as day. Prime Minister, every reputable economist says that government spending is having a big impact on inflation. Is it seriously your position that they are all wrong and you are right?
Give a call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. The RBA Governor's statements
Order.
were very
Members
clear.
on my left will just cease interjecting.
What the RBA Governor said was what's happened in the last 6 months or so, private demand has turned out to be much stronger than we have been forecasting. That is what the RBA Governor said. So there will be, if you have 10 economists in a room, I'm sure you'll usually get 12 different views. But the truth is that the RBA Governor has spoken about what, and the Manager of Opposition Business now attacks the integrity and independence of the RBA Governor, and says that they are not allowed. The interjections are there on the record from this lightweight over here who can't do his own job and is now trying to be the shadow treasurer. Well, we on this side, side of the House will stand up for the RBA Governor, we'll stand up for the independence of the Reserve Bank Board, and we'll also stand up for Australia's national interest. Those opposite continue to try to talk Australia down. When you look at whether it's that, the comments before of the OECD, now I accept that the OECD as well, with the Secretary-General there, a fellow called Matthias Cormann, who was backed by this side when we were in opposition for that job, and backed to be reappointed by this side as a government to be the Secretary-General of the OECD. And his statements I read in the Hansard before through the OECD. The RBA Governor's comments, the IMF had this to say in November last year. Australia is managing a soft landing amid global uncertainty. The Commonwealth's fiscal strategy has been effective over the past pandemic period. That's what the IMF said. And since then, we provided something that would be unfamiliar to those opposite. We provided MyEFO with an additional $20 billion of savings. Now, those opposite need to come clean about what it is that they think should be cut. What it is, because they didn't do anything when they were in government, and we have found $114 billion of savings.
Call to the honourable member for Bendigo.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government's investments in 1800 Medicare and Medicare urgent care clinics taking the pressure off emergency departments and ensuring Australians get the health care advice they need after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member for Bendigo for her question and for being such a Medicare champion. The hard work that she has done promoting our strengthening Medicare agenda in her community means that the people of Bendigo have enjoyed some of the best results in the country. After we tripled the bulk billing incentives for pensioners, concession card holders and children back in 2023, bulk billing in Bendigo went up by 10%, the third best result of any electorate in this country, Mr Speaker, and our latest investments are proving just as successful in her community. Before November, Mr Speaker, fewer than 1 in 5 general practices in Bendigo bulk billed all of their patients all of the time. Today that figure is 3 in 5. More than tripled in just 3 months, Mr Speaker. Now, the Bendigo Urgent Care Clinic that the member talks about has also seen almost 20,000 members of her community since it opened in late 2024, all free of charge, and about half of them indicate that if the clinic wasn't available, they would have gone to the local hospital, the Bendigo Hospital Emergency Department. And as a result, semi-urgent and non-urgent presentations to the Bendigo Emergency Department, what they call Category 4 and Category 5 presentations, are down almost 10% at that hospital, freeing the ED staff up to focus on the lifetime emergencies that they were trained for and hospitals were built for, Mr Speaker. Now, as the Prime Minister has said last week, he struck an historic agreement with Premiers and Chief Ministers to provide record support to our public hospitals, 750 of them, including the Bendigo Hospital, tripling the additional support that hard-working hospitals would receive compared to the agreement that they had struck under Scott Morrison. But that's on top of all of these investments to strengthen Medicare, to deliver high-quality, affordable care to people in their own community, to take pressure off hospitals like the one at Bendigo, Mr Speaker, by rebuilding general practice, by driving up bulk billing, by rolling out urgent care clinics. But there is more, Mr Speaker, as the member says. 1-800 Medicare was an election commitment we made last year, and it now provides access to high-quality medical advice 24/7 at the end of your phone, Mr Speaker, as well, if appropriate, as a direct consultation by a GP on telehealth after hours, all free of charge, obviously, Mr Speaker. And since we launched 1-800 Medicare on the 1st of January last month, 120,000 Australians have used that helpline and 5,000 of them have been referred to that GP consult after hours, Mr Speaker. 120,000 in just 1 month, all helping to deliver the stronger Medicare that the member for Bendigo has been fighting so hard for.
Call to the member for Gippsland.
Well, thank you, Speaker. And my question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. The Minister has had several opportunities in question time this week to explain when Australian families can expect the $275 reduction in their power bills promised by the Prime Minister. Will the Minister finally admit the Prime Minister wasn't telling the truth and not a single Australian family has seen the $275 reduction? Minister, why can't anyone in the Labor Party accept responsibility and just say sorry to the Australian people who are struggling under Labor's cost of living crisis?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thanks, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. I take responsibility for the energy system in Australia. I take responsibility for the Minister, as the Minister, for progress. I take responsibility for dealing with the headwinds and the setbacks. That's what a Minister does. A Minister takes responsibility and deals with it. Doesn't hide electricity rises before an election, for example. Well, that's an option. That is an option available to a Minister. It's not an option that I've chosen to take. I take responsibility for the progress. I take responsibility for dealing with the setbacks. I take responsibility for the more than 1,000 batteries that have been installed in the honourable member's electorate, 1,139 that have been installed in the honourable member's electorate since July 1. And I note that in Victoria, the wholesale price of energy in May 2022 was $233 a megawatt-hour, and today is $37 a megawatt-hour. I do take responsibility, Mr Speaker, for all the above.
Order. Give the call to the member for McEwen.
The Minister for Education. What reforms is the Albanese Labor government delivering to help more children from disadvantaged backgrounds get access to early education and care, and improve the safety of our early education and care system? What are the risks?
Call to the Minister for Education.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank my friend, the absolutely magnificent member for McEwen, for his question. Mr Speaker, a year ago today we passed laws through the Parliament to enact the 3-day guarantee, and a month ago today we delivered it. It means every child who needs it can get access to the childcare subsidy 3 days a week. We know how important childcare is for mums and dads. It helps them to get back to work. But it's also important for our children. This is a time when most of the brain develops. We know that a child who goes to preschool is 1.5 times as ready to start primary school as a child that doesn't. Ask any primary school teacher and they'll tell you they can identify the children who've been in early education and care. This is not babysitting. and that's why it was the Productivity Commission that recommended this change, the 3-day guarantee. Their advice to us is that it's children from the most disadvantaged families, the poorest families in Australia, who get the biggest benefit from early education, and that they are the ones who are the least likely to be there in early education and care. And that's because of the old activity test that meant their mums and dads couldn't get access to the government subsidy. And so it's their children who missed out and start behind. That now changes with the 3-day guarantee. It means for affected families earning between $50,000 and $100,000, they'll save about $1,500 a year. And it means that their children will get access to the same sort of early education and care that other kids can. Now, I've also been asked about safety. And, Mr Speaker, and I can advise the House that personal mobile phones in centres have now been banned, that Commonwealth compliance officers are now up and running and doing unannounced spot checks, that the national CCTV trial has also started, and that the Australian Federal Police is now also part of the advisory group on that, that the National Educator Register will start at the end of this month, and that mandatory safety training for all staff in centres will start at the end of this month. And, Mr Speaker, members will also remember that we passed legislation through this place last year to give us the power to cut funding to centres that aren't up to scratch, that aren't meeting minimum safety standards. And so far, we've sent notices to more than 60 services across the country. And for some of those 60 services, that deadline that we have set for them is fast approaching. And I'll have more to say about that in the next few weeks.
The call to the Honourable the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Prime Minister. As property owners were slugged this week with their 13th interest rate rise under Labor, the Treasurer has been laying the ground for an increase in capital gains taxes on housing. At the last election, the Prime Minister ruled out changes to negative gearing, saying it would harm housing supply and be anti-aspirational. Given this, will the Prime Minister now rule out raising capital gains tax on housing?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. And the opposition should be well aware that, in fact, the parliament is looking into the capital gains tax discount. Why are they looking into it? Because in November last year, at a time when the Liberals and the Nationals were still together, they combined with the Greens, the old firm, got together. They got together. The old coalition was got together.
Order.
And they established a committee in the other place, a select committee, to look at the operation of the capital gains tax discount.
You voted for it.
There it was. The Liberals, the Nationals and the Greens. Those were the days, Mr Speaker. Those were the days of unity. And it gets worse. The Shadow Minister for Housing, Senator Bragg, guess what? He's on the committee. He's on the committee, as is Senator Sharma. Now, I know there are lots of people over there not talking to each other at the moment, but Senator Bragg is not one of them. He's always talking. And in between talking about days of our lives, he went on to talk about this committee. I assume he had authorisation from the Leader of the Opposition before they set up a committee to look at all of this. So whilst what we've been doing is getting on with supply
the Prime Minister will
through
pause.
the Housing...
The Prime Minister will just pause so I can hear from the Deputy Leader on a point of order. The Prime Minister updated the House on the topic he was asked about, but order. Order. The member for Lingiari is warned. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition will take his point of order now, as he's allowed to.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. It is on relevance. The question was very clear. It is asking whether or not the Prime Minister will rule out increasing capital gains taxes on housing The Prime Minister has not addressed that and is dodging the question.
The order, yes, the Prime Minister was updating the House about the topic and what is before the Parliament, so he is being directly relevant about the topic. If he was talking about another tax policy or another policy, he wouldn't be directly relevant. But order.
Is currently looking at capital gains tax. It's the Liberals, the Nats and the Greens all together over in the other place, having a look at all of that. We have, and every year in the lead up to budgets, we have this gameplay, Mr. Speaker. I'll talk about what we are doing, not what we're not doing. What we are doing is the Housing Australia Future Fund, the 5% deposits. They've helped 220,000 Australians into their first home. We're working with the states and territories to build 100,000 new homes reserved for first home buyers. And we were there in the electorate of the member for Spence over last weekend, 7,000 homes in South Australia. What we're also doing is training more tradies to build more homes with free TAFE, the incentives for construction apprenticeships. And, of course, what we're doing in defence land is not only good for defence capability, it'll also be good for housing as well, good for housing supply. Now, every budget, what we do is focus on how we deliver for Australians. We're continuing to do that. This upcoming budget will be consistent with budgets number 1, 2, 3 and 4 that have all improved the lives of Australians.
The call to the honourable member for Lingiari.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and the Territories. Minister, what is the Albanese Labor government doing to deliver for regional Australians, and why is unity so important to delivering for our regions?
Call to the Minister for Emergency Management, the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and thanks to the member for Lingiari for her question. If we want to see what delivery in regional and remote Australia looks like, then we need look no further than the member for Lingiari. She does such an amazing job representing her communities, and our thoughts are with communities that may be impacted by the Daly River flood, which is coming soon. I'm really proud to be part of a government that's delivering for our regions. We're investing billions of dollars in remote, rural and regional Australia, whilst those opposite are investing in self-interest. Just yesterday, I joined colleagues to announce the Regional and Remote Airport Support Program, providing financial relief to regional councils who were impacted when Rex Airlines went into voluntary administration, while those opposite were exercising voluntary self-destruction. Mr Speaker, we are delivering in programs across all portfolios to help regional Australians with health, with housing and with education, from home batteries to cheaper childcare to more home care packages. We're delivering $10,000 payments to assist housing apprentices with cost of living pressures, while ensuring Australia gets the workforce that they need to build more homes across our country. We've waived HECS debts for doctors and nurse practitioners working in our regional communities to attract them outside of our big cities, while those opposite have waved goodbye to one another. Mr Speaker, we're delivering cheaper medicines. From January 1 this year, our plan is to make the biggest cut to the cost of medicines
The Minister
on
will
the
pause. The Minister will pause. There's far too much noise. Because he was on a warning and because he's continually ignoring the respect out of the House, the member for Cowper will leave the chamber under 94A. No matter what time of the day you're warned, it carries over. I know he's a good sport. Order. When the House comes to order, the Minister will return to the question.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. As I said, PBS medicines are now $25 or less thanks to our investment in Medicare, saving Australians over $200 million a year. The last time they were that price was in 2004. Silverchair was still together as a band, and so was the Coalition. Our Medicare urgent care clinics have been a game-changer for health care in our regions. There are now 122 urgent care clinics that have opened across the country, 39 9 of those have been in regional, rural and remote areas. And last weekend, the latest Medicare urgent care clinic to open was in Eden Monaro in Bega. No appointment needed. Patients can walk in, all bulk billed. And Chloe from Chira Beach said, excellent doctor with detailed care, not a long wait, so easy, and a relief to receive treatment promptly on the weekend without a visit to the emergency department. Isn't that a good news story?
They hate it.
They hate it. I know they hate it, but good work for all of us, because we believe in Medicare on this side of the House. And we believe in Medicare not only for the cities, but for all the regional areas too. The other thing we did was increase roads to recovery funding to $1 billion a year, because 85% of that's going to regional councils. Because on this side of the House, 24 members represent regional.
Give a call to the member for New England.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Can the Treasurer please inform the House of the cost to the Commonwealth budget on a 25-26 year of the Commonwealth's capacity investment schemes, and to assist the Treasurer, I believe that they should be noted within the quantified contingent liabilities.
Order. Give a call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the member for New England should know, that because the capacity investment scheme involves a number of negotiations, then those numbers are not typically published. But I can tell him, I want to hear what the Treasurer is saying, that the capacity investment scheme is unlocking $73 billion in private investment in renewable energy. Now, I know that the member for New England doesn't support renewable energy, but on this side of the House we do, and we account for all of these investments in the usual way.
Call to the order. The House comes to order. We shall hear from the honourable member for Gilmore.
My question is to the Minister for Housing, Homelessness and Cities. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to build more houses in the regions and help more regional Australians into home ownership after a decade of neglect?
We call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you, Speaker. And what a delight to get this fantastic question from the member for Gilmore. In part because of her advocacy, 667 of her constituents have gotten into home ownership with the backing of the Albanese government, and there are many more to come, Speaker. She's a brilliant representative. Now, Speaker, Australia's housing challenge is significant, and it is not a burden that falls on our city Australians alone. We see a significant housing challenge across the regions and in the bush. And after a decade of complete neglect of housing as an issue for the country, our government is delivering with a level of ambition that we have not seen a Commonwealth do since the Second World War. Now, Speaker, that is a huge agenda, $45 billion, which is targeted on three big things. We're building more homes around the country, we're getting renters a better deal, and we are getting more Australians into home ownership. Now, Speaker, our government's 5% deposit program is incredibly popular with that community of young people who are just trying to get that extra support to get into a home of their own. We are up to now, Speaker, 220,000 Australians who have gotten the keys to their first home with the backing of the Albanese government. Speaker, 73,000 of those Australians have been people who live in the regions and the bush. Speaker, we've got $1.5 billion in housing infrastructure funding. It's going to roads, to sewerage, to water, to all of those critical aspects that make housing possible. The vast majority of that funding, Speaker, has gone straight into the regions. Speaker, we are building homes right around rural and regional Australia. In fact, round 3 of the Housing Australia Future Fund for the first time includes a dedicated regional stream to make sure we're servicing that constituency. We've got social and affordable homes being built in Tamworth, in South Grafton, in Shepparton, Armidale, Wangaratta and many more. Now, Speaker, the member asked me about alternatives, and we have seen some shockers in the time that I've been in parliament, Speaker. For 9 long years, those opposite sat on the benches behind me and decided to do nothing about for what many Australians believe is the most important issue in their lives.
Order.
Nothing, Speaker. As you know, Speaker, they were so checked out of housing as an issue, they couldn't even be bothered having a housing minister. Now, Speaker, that had real consequences. We see the Nationals in the parliament this week scratching their heads about why their voters are deserting them in droves. Maybe it's because they did nothing to deliver for regional Australians when they had the levers of power. Now, Speaker, do you know how many social and affordable homes those opposite built in regional and rural Australia? Do you know how many? It was none, Speaker. A party that says it stands up for the regions, not a single home built in regional Victoria, in regional New South Wales, in regional Western Australia. Speaker, it is no wonder Australians are looking for alternatives. We're united, we're delivering, and we're delivering right across the country, Speaker.
Call to the honourable member for Clare.
To the Infrastructure Minister. Since the days of the gold rush, our residents have been pushing for a crossing over the Macquarie River at Dixon's Long Point in central western New South Wales. Mid-Western Council wants to access the $10 million allocated to move the project forward. Have the funds been released? And on a separate note, will your government take the lead to finally build an expressway through the Blue Mountains, which has been promised for decades and never ever delivered? The traffic jams are worse than ever, and it's just not good enough.
Call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the member for Calare for the question? And I know he's been a long-term advocate for the Dixon's Long Point crossing. We know how important the safety of regional roads are and connectivity in our regions are. It is why we announced the investment of $10 million into the Dixon Long Point crossing. The crossing will provide a much-needed crossing between Mudgee and Orange. The member for Calare will remember he wrote to me about this last year, requesting an update on that project. In October last year, when he wrote, I was able to advise that the Mid-West Regional Council had submitted the final project proposal report to my department, and that then was had assessment undertaken. I am pleased to provide a further update and report that I have approved this project proposal for the release of funding of $10 million to Transport for New South Wales on behalf of the Mid-Western Regional Council. That money goes towards the planning work, scope, design and cost of delivering this project, so you should start to see a project on that planning work. It's a project, as you have mentioned, with a very, very long history, and I'm pleased to provide that update.
The call to the honourable member for Moreton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. What are the objectives of the Prime Minister's upcoming visit to Indonesia? Why are our relationships in the region and the world so important for Australians at home? How has the government worked to improve those relationships since being elected?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Moreton for her question and for her ongoing interest in our relationships in our region. Last year in Sydney, I stood on the deck of the HMAS Canberra beside my friend President Prabowo Subianto, and I announced that Australia and Indonesia would take the next step in our bilateral relationship, securing a historic security agreement between our two nations. And in about 40 minutes, I will travel to Jakarta to formally sign that treaty, deepening the bond that we have, honouring our long shared history and looking ahead to our shared future. Our mutual security treaty commits our two nations to consult at a leader and ministerial level on security matters together and to consider any security responses together. It is a watershed moment in the Australia-Indonesia partnership, a partnership that is based on friendship, trust, mutual respect and a shared commitment to peace and stability in our region. But it's also part of our broader engagement with nations in the region and our investment in our relationships. The alliance with Papua New Guinea, the Pasir Ria with Timor-Leste, the Fallapili Agreement with Tuvalu and the treaty with Nauru, and our deeper engagement with ASEAN and the Pacific Islands Forum. We live in the fastest-growing region of the world in human history. Australia's prosperity and our security lies within our region, and engaging with our neighbours and partners is vital to building a more peaceful, stable, prosperous and secure future for all of us and for generations to come. Australia engages in our region as a neighbour, a partner and a middle power. Our world matters and our word is respected because we back it up with action. This treaty is a proud moment in the shared history of Australia and Indonesia, and it will ensure that we work together to shape a better future, securing our shared place in the world so that we can secure the best outcome for those we serve here at home. And on that note, Mr Speaker, I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.